it's Mia from the Cozy Bookshop today, and I have a doozy of a video for you today. So if you won't mind, go ahead and grab yourself a cup of something yummy to drink and come join me for a little chat about reading. Hopefully you've got your cup of something yummy and we can have a nice long chit chat about reading. I'm going to start this off by talking about what I read, how I read, and when I read. And then I'm going to give some tips on just reading more and finding the time to read, as well as open it up. I want to have a discussion with you guys and talk about your reading and what you read, how you read, why you read, yada yada. So, to start with, when I read. Point number one. I am a mom of two, one of which who is just turning 2, so I am a 2 under 2 mom. Kind of, just about, pretty much. I'm a wife. I am a homemaker. I consider myself a homemaker. I work part-time and I run my own business. So I lead a very busy life, or what I like to think is a very busy life. And it does not always allow for a lot of time to read. And it took me a little while to really kind of look at my schedule and look at my priorities and see where I could kind of shift things to make time for reading. For me, reading is very important. It's how I unwind. It's how I kind of get that time to get back to myself, to get some sanity back into my life, and just really be one with myself and kind of unwind, really, if you want to say, and relax. It's my time. We're very big here at the Cozy Bookshop in making time to treat yourself and really kind of getting away from the busy of every day, and reading is an excellent way to do that, and it's the way that I personally do it. So when I read is kind of a tricky outlet. I read during meal times for the most, sometimes during meal times. I definitely read in the morning at breakfast because I take breakfast before my kids get up, otherwise I will never get it. I take breakfast before my kids get up, so I will sit at our table with my book and whatever I'm eating for breakfast and my tea, and I'll have about 30 to 45 minutes to just read and eat and kind of get a nice start. I find like that's the best time to start my day and the best way to start my day. I kind of actually feel a little bit frazzled, I guess you could say, if I don't get to start my day that way. And then the other time that I really get a chance to read is after the boys go to bed. Bedtime is my favorite time. Not really. It's not really my favorite time. But once the boys are in bed, I usually stay up for another hour and a half to 2 hours, and that is when I do all of my reading. About 20 to 30 minutes, my husband goes to bed early, so about 20 to 30 minutes I spend some time with him. We get some, quality alone time with each other to just talk and talk about our days and what was going on, and plan forward if we need to, and then the rest of that time I spend reading. This is when I get the bulk of my reading done during the week, is that couple hours after they go to bed before I go to sleep. And I find that reading before bed is the best way to let me unwind as well. So I kind of start my day with reading and I end my day with reading, and it really just gives me a chance to just gather myself and just relax. On the weekends, I do also in the afternoon. Both boys nap at the same time, so I get a little bit of time in there to read in the afternoon on the weekends. So that's kind of nice. During the week, I'm working, so I get an extra 4 hours on the weekend of reading, which I will take what I can get right now. So that is when I read. How I read, I love physical books. There's something to me that is, for example, I have these from what I was just filming. I'm filming 3 videos in a row right now, kind of pre-filming for the new year. But I love being able to hold a book in my hands, to be able to open it, to mark in it. I have a whole video about annotating books, which I'm not even going to get into right now. but I love having a physical book in my hands. I have been known to read an electronic novel every now and then. I have done that. I don't begrudge electronic novels. If you're reading, you're reading. I don't care. It's just not for me. I'm a physical book kind of person, and I don't think that will ever change. I love having my books too much. I have listened to a couple audiobooks as well over the years when I was working in an office. This was a big one for me, and I found I did a lot of reading that way. Being able to plug my headphones in and have an audiobook going in the background. So I like those too. During road trips, I can't read in the car. I get car sick very easily. So a lot of times I'll plug in an audiobook. And so I like those as well. But I like to stick to physical books. I just love the feeling of a book in my hand. And then as far as genres that I go for, I like adult fiction. If you want to delve deeper, I like historical fiction. I like mystery. And I like kind of the horror, like thriller, borderline horror. I have read a couple horror novels. I do like those too, but more like thriller lines. So those are my 3 favorite. That's what I reach for the most, historical fiction being like the highest. I'm a massive historical fiction reader. I don't really ever, I shouldn't say never, like I very rarely go towards romance. I'm not a chick lit romance novel reader. I don't begrudge anyone who is. It is not my genre. It is not for me. Every once in a while I will pick one up just because I just find that I need that cutesy, but I much rather honestly watch a Hallmark movie than read a Hallmark book. That's just my personal opinion. I don't begrudge. If you are a chick lit, that kind of a reader, that is great. There are some excellent books. I could probably even recommend some excellent books for the kind of like romancy, chick lit type of stuff. I just find that I prefer to just watch a movie, which crazy enough, because I never thought I would prefer that over reading a book, but when it comes to that kind of genre, I think I just much rather watch a movie than read the book, realistically. It is what it is. And then the other one that I don't really go too much for, I'm not a big like science fiction fan. I have been known to pick up a science fiction book or two, but it's not like something that I really go for very often. It takes a lot for me to really get into them. So that's kind of like where I teeter-totter on my books for the genre that I read. So that concludes, the little bits about me and my reading. A couple of tips for reading more. My biggest tip is, a lot of times I hear from a lot of people that they are simply too busy. There's too much going on. They don't have time to just sit down and read or, do any of that. And this is what I say to that. There's always time to read. Honestly, even if you're just listening to an audiobook while you're cooking dinner, I consider that reading. You're still absorbing a text. You've got the words coming into your brain. I am perfectly, if that is what the only time that you have is listening to an audiobook while you're preparing dinner or breakfast or whatever meal you're preparing, at least you're reading. I would challenge anyone, to find the time to take 30 minutes every couple days to actually sit down and read. I do understand that in some situations that's just not feasible. I get it. But I believe that you will find yourself much calmer, much more relaxed, more able to approach other problems and just approach your day to day if you take that 30 minutes every couple days or once a week to just sit down and read. If you're doing it once a week, I would encourage like an hour, like more than 30 minutes. But at the very least, I would encourage you to take, 30 minutes. You can, and here's the other thing to go along with that, is you can always find the time. You just kind of you have to look at your schedule. When our second son was born, I didn't really know like how I would really find the time to actually read, because that's a whole new element that you're bringing into a family. When it was just my husband, me, and our first son, it was super easy because he would, nap at predictable times. I would have, a little bit of time to myself in the evenings. When you bring in a baby into the situation, it's hard because you just don't know what that element, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to have the time. I knew it was important to me and I needed to find the schedule to do it. And so you just you have to look at your day, your 24 hours as a whole. And I knew that I needed sleep from this hour to this hour. My work hours were these hours and these hours. And I kind of like shifted and looked around and looked at what my priorities really were, to find the time that I now have to read. I'm saying I probably get 2.5 to 3 hours of reading in a day because I've shifted those priorities. I'm very lucky. My husband helps out quite a bit. When he gets home in the evening, he helps out cleaning up the kitchen after dinner. He, plays with the boys. He helps with bedtime. When he is home, he is very present and involved. So I know that I get very lucky in that, but irregardless, if you look at, you kind of shift around and you look at your schedule and your hours as a whole, you can find those little bits of time here and there where you can listen to an audiobook, where you can be, perusing your book at this juncture. When your kids go to bed, you do a tidy of the house and then you sit down for 30 to 45 minutes before going to bed and read a book. I guarantee you will sleep better. If you sit down with a decaf cup of tea and a book, you will sleep 10 times better. At least that is for me, I will say. That's my experience. But my biggest tip is to look at your schedule as a whole. Look and see where you have those little nuggets of time that you can pull out and say, instead of, meaninglessly surfing the web or just zoning out to a TV show, I'm going to pull a book off my shelf and read this 45 minutes of time that I find that I have after my kids have gone to bed and before I fall asleep. I promise you. Just try it. See what happens. And sometimes those little nuggets of time is an audiobook while you're making dinner. And like I said, that is okay. That still is reading. There is nothing that doesn't count as if you're not reading, that doesn't count as reading. But there is nothing, an audiobook, electronic, physical, it doesn't matter. You are still reading. I cannot stress that enough. Like, even if you're listening to an audiobook, you're reading. My youngest son agrees with me on this point. So, with that being said, I would love to hear from you. Do you find that you have the time to read? Do you use it as a time to unwind? What do you read? Are you reading physical books? Do you listen to audiobooks? I would love to hear from you and what your experiences are. Are you struggling to find time to read? I just would love to hear from you and love to have a discussion about this.